my dear friends, can you even imagine the sound that shattered my world that crisp autumn evening? It was just a thud, really, a duffel bag hitting the floor upstairs. But in our old brownstone in Boston, it echoed like thunder rolling through my soul. At 57, after decades of raising kids and teaching middle school English, I'd learned to listen to those gut feelings, the ones that whisper trouble before it screams. And right then, my heart was pounding, telling me something was terribly wrong. What if the man I'd called my son for all these years was about to rip our family apart? Hold on tight, because this story of betrayal, hidden secrets, and a grandmother's unbreakable love is going to pull at your heartstrings like nothing else. If you've ever felt the sting of abandonment or the ache of family secrets bubbling up, you're in the right place. Let's dive in, shall we? Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and subscribe to Ageless Bold Stories channel. We're creating a community of people who know that our best chapters can happen any age. Now, back to the story. It all started on that ordinary Tuesday in October, the kind of day where the leaves outside our windows were turning shades of gold and red, mocking the chill settling into my bones. I was down in the kitchen, ironing Ethan's school clothes, his favorite blue polo shirt, the one with the little collar that always needed extra starch to stay crisp for his 8th grade classes. Ethan, my sweet grandson, was turning 14 soon, and he'd grown into this thoughtful boy with his mother's kind eyes and his father's stubborn streak. I'd been his rock since the day his mom, my daughter-in-law Sarah, passed away during childbirth. God, that was 14 years ago, but the pain still hits me fresh some days, like a wave crashing over me without warning. Anyway, I was humming an old tune, something from my teaching days. Maybe Amazing Grace, to keep my mind steady, when I heard it. That thud. It came from upstairs, sharp and heavy, like someone dropping a load of regrets. Our house, this historic brownstone we'd called home for generations, has those high ceilings and creaky floors that amplify every little noise. It sent a shiver right down my spine, straight to my toes. At 57, I'm no spring chicken, but I've got that teacher's intuition sharpened from years of spotting kids hiding notes or sneaking out of class. Something was off, way off. I set the iron down carefully on the board, steam hissing like a warning, and wiped my hands on my apron. "Daniel?" I called out softly, but there was no answer. My son, Daniel, he was up there in his room. Or at least, that's where he spent most of his time these days, glued to his screens. I climbed those groaning wooden stairs, each step creaking under my weight like the house itself was protesting. My knees ached a bit from the damp Boston weather, but I pushed on, my heart racing faster with every riser. What could that noise be? A fall? An accident? Or worse, something deliberate? By the time I reached the landing, my breath was short, and I could hear rustling from behind his door, which stood slightly ajar. I peeked in, and there he was. Daniel, my only child, cramming jeans and flannel shirts into his old black duffel bag with the kind of frenzy you'd see in a movie escape scene. No folding, no care, just stuffing, like he couldn't get out fast enough. His personal tablet was propped open on the rumpled bed sheets, screens flickering with open apps, emails, maybe maps, who knows? It glowed eerily in the dim light from the window. "Heading out somewhere?" I asked from the threshold, trying to keep my voice steady, casual even. But inside, panic was bubbling up like a pot about to boil over. Daniel didn't even look up at first. He just muttered, "Yeah, urgent work conference. Last-minute thing." Oh, please. I knew that was a lie the second it left his lips. Daniel worked as a remote IT consultant for a small firm out of Cambridge, fixing servers from his home office, troubleshooting code over Zoom calls. They never sent him anywhere. Heck, He barely left the house these days, let alone for some fancy conference. How long? I pressed, stepping a foot inside the room. He shrugged, grabbing a handful of socks. Not sure. Could be a week, maybe more. That's when it happened. The first real crack in my heart that evening. In his haste, he swung around and bumped the nightstand, knocking over that silver-framed picture of Sarah cradling baby Ethan. It was our most precious memento, the one capturing her radiant smile just hours after giving birth, her eyes full of love and exhaustion. The frame hit the hardwood floor with a sharp crack, glass splintering like fragile dreams. Shards scattered everywhere, catching the fading light. And Daniel? He barely glanced down, just stepped over it, like it was yesterday's trash. Oh God, that hurt. For years after Sarah died, complications from labor, the doctor said, he'd kiss his fingers and touch that frame every single night before bed. It was his ritual, his way of keeping her close. Now he treated it like debris. Can you picture that? The man who'd once grieved so deeply now trampling his own memories. Daniel, stop, I said, my voice firmer now as I moved fully into the room. The air felt thick, charged with unspoken words. Talk to me. What's really going on here? He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there, it chilled me to my core. No remorse, no tears, just this cold, empty resolve, like a switch had flipped inside him. Relief, almost, flickering in those eyes that used to light up at family dinners. I'm leaving, Mom, he said flatly. I should have done this ages ago. The words landed like a slap, knocking the wind out of me. Leaving? After everything? For 14 years, I'd been the one holding this family together. When Sarah passed, Daniel fell into a pit of grief so deep he could barely function. I'd stepped in, retired early from teaching, used my pension to cover the bills, raised Ethan like my own. Diaper changes, school plays, late-night fevers. I did it all while Daniel hid behind his computer screens, drowning in online games or whatever distractions kept him numb. I'd never questioned his late nights, his growing distance. I thought it was healing. But now? This? What about Ethan? I whispered, my voice cracking. He was downstairs in the den, probably buried in his history essay, oblivious to the storm brewing above. Daniel zipped the duffel with a final, echoing rip. He's better off with you. Always has been. Better off? The casual cruelty of it stole my breath. Ethan adored his dad, even if Daniel had become more like a ghost in our home. You can't just abandon your son, I pleaded, grabbing his arm as he tried to brush past. His muscle tensed under my fingers, but he shook me off like I was a stranger. I'm not abandoning him. I'm leaving him with the real parent, the one who's actually raised him. Real parent? I'd poured my soul into that boy, yes, but Daniel was his father. Blood. How could he say that? He headed for the stairs, duffel thumping against his leg, and I followed, my slippers scuffing the worn runner. My mind raced. Flashes of memories. Daniel as a boy, running into my arms after school. The day he married Sarah in our backyard, under the maple tree. The hospital room where we lost her, and he crumbled. How had we gotten here? In the den, Ethan looked up from his notebook. Pencil paused mid-sentence. He took in the bag, Daniel's set jaw, my panicked face. Those big brown eyes. Sarah's eyes widened just a fraction. Going somewhere, Dad? He asked, voice steady but with that quiet undertone I'd come to recognize as his way of bracing for bad news. Daniel paused at the front door, hand on the knob. For a split second I thought I saw a flicker. Regret? Doubt? Ethan had shot up tall like his dad, lanky and thoughtful, with Sarah's gentle nature. I need a break, buddy, Daniel said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Time for some self-discovery. Grandma will take care of things. Ethan nodded once like he was processing data in one of his science projects. For how long? Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Not sure yet. I'll call. And just like that, Ethan went back to his essay, but I saw the tightness in his shoulders. No outburst, no tears, just quiet acceptance. Had he seen this coming? Kids sense things, don't they? Deeper than we give them credit for. The door opened, letting in the cool October breeze, carrying scents of fallen leaves and distant rain. Daniel stepped out onto the stoop, turning back one last time. I'll be in touch when I'm settled. Where are you going? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. He glanced at his blue SUV parked curbside. Somewhere I can start over. Breathe again. And with that, he loaded the bag, climbed in, and drove away into the twilight. Taillights fading like dying stars. The house fell silent. Save for the tick of the old mantel clock and the hum of the fridge. Ethan and I stood there, frozen in the moment. Finally, he closed his notebook. Is he coming back, Grandma? I wanted to lie, to shield him with soft words, but Ethan was too sharp for fairy tales. I don't think so, sweetheart. He stacked his books neatly, that methodical way of his, and looked at me with an expression far too old for his years. Don't worry, I'll handle this. Handle it? My 14-year-old grandson saying that with such calm assurance? It almost made me chuckle through the tears welling up. What could he possibly mean? But there was no bravado, just quiet certainty, like he held a secret plan. Handle what, Ethan? He picked up his things and headed for the stairs. I need to check our financial apps first. Then we'll know what we're dealing with. Financial apps? The words hung in the air as he climbed up, leaving me alone in the den with a whirlwind of questions. What did he know that I didn't? Had he been watching his father more closely than I'd realized? That night, sleep evaded me like a thief in the shadows. I tossed in my bed, the house creaking around me, each sound amplified in the darkness. Memories flooded in, Daniel's wedding vows to Sarah, promising forever. The funeral where he clung to baby Ethan like a lifeline, the slow fade as grief turned him inward, leaving me to pick up the pieces. How had I missed the signs? The secretive phone calls, the way he'd snap his tablet shut when I entered the room. Was there someone else? A hidden life? Oh, the thought twisted like a knife. Around midnight, I heard it. Soft clicking from Ethan's room. Keyboard taps, steady and purposeful. I slipped on my robe, padded down the hall, and knocked gently. Ethan, it's late, honey. Come in, Grandma. He was still dressed, sitting at his desk surrounded by notebooks and his laptop glowing like a beacon. What are you doing up? I asked, sinking into the chair beside him. Research, he said simply, gesturing to the screen. Bank statements, email logs, things I barely understood. Dad's digital trails. I've been digging for hours. My stomach dropped. How did you get these? He shrugged, almost sheepishly. Dad's passwords are predictable. Sarah 2011, the year he married Mom. He clicked, and Daniel's email popped up. Not hacking if the door's left open. Oh Lord, my grandson teaching himself this? But then he handed me a printout. And the world tilted. My retirement account, $8. Just $8. This can't be right, I whispered, hands trembling. It is, Ethan said, his voice heavy. Dad's been siphoning for months. Your savings, my college fund. Gone. Gone. The word echoed in my head, a hollow ache spreading through my chest. That fund was Sarah's legacy, set aside for Ethan's future. And Daniel had drained it? For what? There's more, Ethan continued, pulling up a profile. Nicole Ramirez. She works at Apex Wealth Management in downtown Boston. Dad's involved with her. A photo. Young, vibrant, dark hair, vacation shots in tropical places. Girlfriend? I choked out. Ethan nodded, jaw tight. More. She's helped him move the money, set up fake accounts, even loans in our names. Loans? $25,000 home equity in my name. A $10,000 credit line using Ethan's info, age faked to 22. Identity theft. From my own son? Tears burned my eyes as Ethan showed emails, plans to run away, change names, start fresh with our stolen future. How did you learn this? I asked, awe mixing with horror. Watched Dad's odd behavior, secret calls, quick closes, learn from online forums, coding videos. It's not hard if you pay attention. He'd filed alerts already, fraud reports, tips to Nicole's boss. Her career's crumbling as we speak, he said with cold satisfaction. Can you believe it? My boy, waging war from his bedroom. But the pain hit like a tidal wave, first high point of emotion that night, sobbing as betrayal sank in. Daniel, my flesh and blood, stealing from us, from his son. The next morning, over coffee Ethan brewed, strong, black. Like he knew I needed fortitude, he revealed more. Nicole's past, fraud in Chicago, skimming retirements, settled quietly. She'd targeted elders like me, and Daniel, he'd coded the covers, faked losses. 15 victims so far, Ethan said. Over $350,000 gone. My hands shook. Anger boiled, the second emotional peak, fury at Daniel's predation on the vulnerable. By afternoon, as Ethan planned anonymous packets for victims, evidence, guides, I marveled at his resolve. But doubt crept in. Was this too much for him? Age doesn't matter, he insisted. We fight back. That quiet fire in his eyes, it broke and mended my heart, the third surge of raw emotion. As the sun set, I wondered, what secrets would unfold next? Would Daniel call, begging, or had he vanished for good? Friends, what would you do if your world crumbled like this? Share in the comments. Have you faced betrayal? Hit that like if it resonates, subscribe so you don't miss the next twist, and share if you've felt this pain. Stay tuned for Chapter 2. Things get darker. Oh my goodness, friends. Have you ever felt that icy grip of dread when the person you trusted most turns out to be a complete stranger? That night after Daniel drove away into the Boston twilight, leaving me and Ethan in the echoing silence of our brownstone, I thought the worst was over. The abandonment, the shattered photo of Sarah, the cold goodbye. But oh, how wrong I was. What if I told you that betrayal ran deeper than just walking out the door? That my own son had been plotting in the shadows, stealing not just our money, but our future. And the real shocker? My 14-year-old grandson Ethan was the one uncovering it all. Like a young detective in a nightmare we couldn't wake from. If you've ever discovered a family secret that broke your heart wide open, buckle up. This chapter dives into the darkness, with twists that still haunt my dreams. Let's pick up right where we left off, shall we? Standing there in the den, the front door still ajar from Daniel's exit, letting in that crisp fall chill that seemed to seep right into my bones, I felt like the ground had shifted under me. Ethan had just stacked his history books with that precise, almost mechanical care of his, and looked at me with those eyes, so much like Sarah's, full of quiet wisdom beyond his years. "Don't worry, Grandma," he said again, his voice steady as a rock. "I'll handle this." I remember blinking back tears, forcing a weak smile. Handle it? He was just a boy, barely into his teens, still navigating algebra and awkward school dances. What could he possibly do about his father abandoning us? But there was no time to press him. He was already heading up the stairs, backpack slung over one shoulder, leaving me alone with the ticking clock and a house that suddenly felt too big, too empty. I sank into the armchair by the window, watching the streetlights flicker on outside, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. My mind raced back through the years. Daniel as a toddler, chubby cheeks and endless questions. The proud day he graduated college, Sarah beaming at his side. The crushing months after her death, when I'd moved in to help, turning my life upside down to keep theirs from falling apart. 14 years of sacrifices, my teaching pension stretched thin for Ethan's braces, summer camps, all the little things that make a childhood. And now, gone. Just like that. Can you imagine the ache, friends? That hollow pit in your stomach when everything you built crumbles in an instant? Sleep? Ha, that was a joke that night. I tossed and turned in my bed, the sheets tangling around me like regrets. Every creak of the old brownstone amplified in the dark, the wind rattling the windows, the distant hum of traffic on Beacon Street. Memories flooded me. Daniel's increasingly distant dinners, where he'd poke at his food while staring at his phone, the way he'd lock himself in his room for hours, claiming work deadlines. I'd chalked it up to lingering grief, maybe even depression. Never once did I suspect something sinister. Around midnight, as the grandfather clock in the hall chimed its lonely toll, I heard it. Soft, rhythmic clicking from down the hall. Keyboard taps, deliberate and focused, coming from Ethan's room. At that hour, he should have been dreaming of video games or school crushes, not whatever this was. I slipped out of bed, pulling my robe tight against the chill, and padded barefoot down the creaky hallway. The strip of light under his door glowed like a beacon, and the typing continued, unbroken. My heart pounded. What was he doing? I knocked softly, knuckles barely brushing the wood. Ethan, honey, it's way past bedtime. There was a pause, then his voice, calm as ever. Come in, Grandma. I pushed the door open, and the sight hit me like a wave. There he was, still in his school clothes, sitting ramrod straight at his desk. Spreadsheets glowed on his laptop screen, surrounded by stacks of printed papers. Bank statements, what looked like email logs, charts with arrows and numbers that swam before my eyes. The room smelled faintly of printer ink and the pizza we'd had for dinner, but the air was thick with something else. Purpose. Ethan gestured to the mess without looking up. I'm investigating Dad's online trails. Sit down. You need to see this. My legs felt like jelly as I lowered myself into the chair beside him, the worn cushion sighing under me. Online trails? What do you mean? He clicked a few keys, pulling up a window that showed financial logs. Our accounts, laid bare. Dad wasn't careful. His password's predictable. Sarah, 2011, the year he married Mom. He typed it in, and just like that, Daniel's email and banking apps opened up. No hacking wizardry, just simple guesswork. It's not breaking in if he left the key under the mat, Ethan said matter-of-factly, but his eyes held a shadow of hurt. I leaned in, squinting at the screen, and that's when the first real hammer blow landed. My nest egg, the retirement savings I'd scrimped and saved from 30 years of grading essays and mediating playground fights, down to $8. $8 measly dollars. This can't be right, I whispered, my voice breaking as tears blurred the numbers. But Ethan nodded solemnly. It is. And my education trust? Empty. Zero balance. The room spun for a moment and I gripped the desk edge to steady myself. Empty? That fund was sacred. Started with Sarah's life insurance, meant for Ethan's college dreams. How could Daniel do this? When? I managed to choke out. Ethan scrolled through transaction histories. Months ago. Slow drips at first, then big transfers to hidden offshore spots, places like the Caymans, untraceable without digging deep. Offshore? My son, The IT guy who'd once fixed my computer with a patient smile, hiding money like some criminal in a thriller novel. The betrayal hit me like a freight train, the first emotional peak of that endless night. Sobs racking my body as I buried my face in my hands. Why, Ethan? Why would he steal from us? Ethan reached over, his young hand patting my shoulder awkwardly, but with genuine warmth. There's more, Grandma. A lot more. He minimized the bank window and pulled up a social media profile. Glamorous photos of a woman with sleek dark hair posing on beaches in Bali, sipping cocktails in fancy resorts. Meet Nicole Ramirez, Ethan said, his tone edged with disgust. She works at Apex Wealth Management downtown. Dad's secret partner. Partner? The word hung heavy, implying more than business. Girlfriend? I asked, my voice trembling. Ethan nodded. Yeah. And she's the one who facilitated it all. Asset shifts, bogus credit lines. He clicked to loan documents. A $25,000 home equity loan in my name, forged signatures and all. Worse, a $10,000 credit line using Ethan's info, with his age falsified to 22. Identity theft. From his own father. Can you even fathom that, friends? Stealing your child's future to fund some illicit escape? I felt sick, bile rising in my throat as the second wave of emotion crashed over me. Raw anger mixing with heartbreak, hot tears streaming down my cheeks. How long have you known? I demanded, though my voice was more plea than accusation. Ethan leaned back, rubbing his eyes. He looked so tired, so much older than 14. Weeks. I noticed Dad's covert texts, the way he'd slam his tablet shut when I walked in. Something felt off, so I started paying attention. Self-taught, he explained, via coding forums and tech tutorial videos on YouTube. It's not rocket science once you learn the basics. Tracking IP logs, spotting patterns. His evidence folder was a digital arsenal. Timestamps on transfers, wire confirmations, even scheming chat logs between Daniel and Nicole. They're planning to disappear, Ethan said flatly. New identities, fresh start, with our money. But he hadn't just uncovered it. He'd acted. I triggered account locks this afternoon, he admitted. Fraud alerts, regulatory tips to the banks. And the kicker? He'd anonymously tipped off Nicole's firm about the breaches, sparking an immediate internal review. Her access is probably revoked by now, he added with a hint of satisfaction that chilled me. My grandson playing digital vigilante while I was downstairs ironing shirts. The weight of it all pressed down. But amid the despair, a flicker of pride sparked. The third emotional surge, a mix of awe and fear swelling in my chest. Who was this boy I'd raised? A protector, forged in the fire of his father's betrayal. We talked into the wee hours, the laptop's hum the only sound besides my occasional sniffles. Ethan showed me how he'd pieced it together, step by step, like a puzzle he'd solved in secret. But as dawn crept through the curtains, tinting the room gray, he closed the laptop. We need rest, Grandma. Tomorrow, I'll show you the rest. The rest? What more could there be? I nodded numbly, kissing his forehead before shuffling back to my room. Sleep came in fits, haunted by visions of Daniel and this Nicole, laughing over stolen dreams. Morning brought weak sunlight filtering through the kitchen windows, casting patterns on the linoleum. I busied myself making breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, fresh coffee brewing to chase away the fog. Ethan appeared downstairs, hair tousled but eyes alert, carrying his laptop like a shield. You cooked? He asked, a small smile breaking through. We both need strength today. I set plates down, pouring orange juice with hands that still shook slightly. Over bites of egg, he revealed more, his voice steady but laced with underlying anger. Nicole's got a history, prior fraud in Chicago, arrested for skimming client funds from a brokerage firm. He pulled up old news clippings, court records he'd unearthed. She settled out of court, paid restitution, then relocated here unchecked. Apex never dug deep enough. How? Ethan explained he'd cracked her systems too, pattern-guessed credentials, similar weak passwords. People reuse variations, he said, shrugging, like it was common knowledge. But what he showed next gutted me. Nicole targeted seniors' retirements, folks like me, trusting their nest eggs to experts. And Daniel? He'd coded the diversions for her. Fake investment trails, phony market loss reports to cover the thefts. Emails between them detailed it all. Selecting vulnerable clients with few relatives, siphoning thousands while sending bogus statements showing gains. Dad knew, Ethan said, his jaw clenching. He helped her prey on them. The images of elderly victims, widows, retirees, flashed in my mind, and fury boiled over again, tears mixing with my cooling coffee. How could my son become this monster? By midday, as rain pattered against the windows, Ethan outlined his plan. Anonymous packets to the victims, full evidence trails, guides to report the crimes. We'll get our money back too, he promised. Disputes on the loans, potential restitution if they go down. But the question lingered. What if Daniel found out? What darkness awaited? Oh, friends, can you feel the storm building? What secrets would explode next? Arrests? Confrontations? Tell me in the comments. Would you forgive a son like Daniel, or let justice run its course? Like if this twists your heart, subscribe to catch Chapter 3's bombshell, and share if betrayal hits close to home. Don't miss what's coming. The real fight begins. Oh, friends, have you ever stared into the abyss of a loved one's betrayal and wondered if justice could ever truly heal the wounds? That rainy Boston morning after Ethan laid bare the horrors of Daniel and Nicole's schemes, preying on innocent seniors like vultures circling the vulnerable, I thought we'd hit rock bottom. But what if I told you the real storm was just brewing, with arrests, desperate pleas, and a redemption arc that would make your heart soar and shatter all at once? As my grandson turned our nightmare into a crusade, I learned that sometimes the youngest among us carry the heaviest truths. If you've ever fought for your family against all odds, or felt the bittersweet sting of consequences catching up, this final chapter will leave you breathless. It's the end of our tale, but the echoes, they'll linger long after. Let's wrap this up, shall we? Picking right up from that kitchen table where the rain drummed like accusations against the glass. As Ethan clicked through those damning emails on his laptop, the screen casting a harsh glow on his young face, I felt like I was peering into a stranger's life. Not my son's. There they were. Detailed plans for phony investment portfolios, crafted to look legitimate while siphoning away life savings. See here? Ethan pointed, his finger tracing lines of text. They even had criteria for picking victims. Widows over 70, no close family, accounts over $20,000. Dad suggested using algorithms to flag the easiest targets. Algorithms? My Daniel, the boy who'd once built model rockets in our backyard, now weaponizing code to exploit the elderly? The words blurred through my tears, each one a fresh cut. 15 cases Ethan had uncovered so far, with total losses exceeding $350,000, retirements vanished, dreams deferred, all funneled into hidden accounts for their grand escape. Can you picture those poor souls, friends? Opening fake statements showing market dips while their nest eggs funded tropical getaways for thieves? I pushed my coffee away, appetite gone as the first wave of that morning's emotion surged through me, a choking mix of rage and sorrow that left me gasping. This isn't just about us anymore, I whispered, voice trembling. Ethan nodded, his expression hardening in a way no 14-year-old should know. Exactly. That's why I'm planning discreet mailings, anonymous proof packets to each victim. He pulled up a draft on his screen. Neatly organized folders with audit trails, transaction logs, screenshots of forged documents. Each packet would include step-by-step recovery guides, contacts for federal agencies like the FTC and SEC, even templates for filing complaints. They'll have everything they need to fight back, he said, without knowing it came from a kid in Boston. Smart, methodical. My grandson was building a quiet revolution from his bedroom desk. For our own mess, Ethan had already filed credit disputes on those fraudulent loans, the $25,000 home equity in my name, the $10,000 line twisted from his identity. Potential clawbacks through legal channels, he explained, sounding like a seasoned lawyer. If Nicole's assets get liquidated in the investigation, we could see restitution. Restitution? The word dangled like a fragile hope, but I couldn't shake the worry gnawing at me. Ethan, honey, I said, reaching for his hand across the table. This is so much for someone your age. You're still a boy. School, friends, all that. He squeezed back, his grip surprisingly firm. Age doesn't matter when you've got the knowledge, Grandma, and the will to use it. His eyes met mine, fierce and unyielding, sparking the second emotional high, that swell of maternal pride mixed with terror, tears pricking again, as I realized he'd grown up overnight, forged in this fire we never asked for. He glanced at the clock, shoving the last bite of toast in his mouth. Gotta get to school. Biotest today. Just like that, he packed his backpack, laptop tucked safely inside, balancing straight-A academics with these covert operations like it was no big deal. I watched him head out into the drizzle, umbrella popping open, his silhouette fading down the sidewalk toward the tea stop. Alone in the kitchen, I cleared the plates with numb hands, the rain a steady patter mirroring my thoughts. What if authorities traced it back to him? What if Daniel discovered his own son was the architect of his downfall? The house felt heavier that day, secrets weighing on every beam. Days blurred into a tense weight. Me puttering around, sorting old photo albums of happier times, while Ethan updated me each evening on progress. Fraud alerts pinged on my phone, banks calling to confirm suspicious activity. Then, 3 days later, as I was folding laundry in the living room, the phone rang. Caller ID, Daniel. My heart leaped into my throat, a mix of longing and fury. I answered on the third ring, voice steadier than I felt. Hello? Mom? He gasped, panic threading every syllable. Everything's falling apart. Assets seized. Inquiries from the cops. Nicole's been demoted, under review. His words tumbled out, breathless. Vehicles towed from their hideout lot. A lease for a new apartment in Miami denied after anonymous flags on their credit. Someone's targeting us, Mom, hacking our lives. I glanced upstairs where Ethan's keyboard clicks drifted down. My boy. The silent storm. Targeting? I echoed, playing along. Daniel spun his tale. It was just short-term loans for a surefire venture. Some crypto scheme Nicole pitched, guaranteed to triple the money in months. We were going to reimburse you, Mom. Pay back with interest, make it right. Oh, the lies. Smooth as ever, but cracking under pressure. I challenged him, voice rising despite myself. Reimburse? You stole Ethan's college fund, Daniel. Used our identities like disposable tools. That's not borrowing. That's deceit. He minimized it, voice turning defensive. Internal family matters, Mom. Morally gray, maybe, but not criminal. That's when Ethan appeared in the doorway, silent as a shadow, holding up his phone. A news bulletin glowed. Local wealth advisor detained for securities fraud. Nicole Ramirez faces charges in multi-victim scheme. My breath caught. The third emotional crest. a rush of vindication and grief crashing over me, tears hot on my cheeks. "Turn on the news, Daniel," I said coolly. "Your girlfriend's in custody." A strangled sound escaped him, half sob, half curse. "Impossible. She was with me an hour ago at the motel." He spilled it all then, desperation loosening his tongue. The dingy Bayview Motel on Route 128, room 207, paying cash since cards were frozen. Ethan nodded at me, fingers flying over his own device, signaling authorities, I realized later, with a tip line he'd prepped. Daniel's pleas turned frantic. "Help me, Mom. I need cash to get out, somewhere safe." Aid? After the ruins he'd left us in? I cited it all. The drained accounts, the shattered trust, the boy he'd abandoned. "You think a few bucks fixes this?" Echoes over the line, pounding on a door, muffled voices. "Police," Daniel whispered, terror raw. Arrest sounds filtered through, charges read aloud. Forgery, money laundering, aiding and abetting theft. The line went dead, but not before his final broken, "Mom." I sank to the floor, sobs racking me as Ethan knelt beside, his arms around me. "It's over," he murmured. But was it? The pain lingered, a scar that time would soften but never erase. Months on, as winter thawed into a hesitant Boston spring, settlements trickled in. An envelope from the district attorney's office, $15,000 to us from Nicole's liquidated holdings, her luxury car sold, jewelry auctioned, ill-gotten investments clawed back. Not everything, but enough to breathe, to seed Ethan's college fund anew. The other victims recouped portions too, 15 households aided, some getting full restitution where transfers were caught early. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes got her entire pension back. Ethan told me one evening, pride lighting his face. Because we acted fast. Daniel? 4 years in federal prison, plea reduced from a potential 10. He'd cooperated, turning on Nicole to shave time. Good behavior might see him out in 3. But Ethan? Oh, my remarkable boy. He didn't stop at justice. He built from the ashes. Guardian Finance Watch, he launched, a sleek website offering services to spot fraud, recover funds, educate families. Already aiding 10 recoveries, he became the youngest certified expert after acing an online course from the Financial Crimes Association. "I'm doing it for them, Grandma," he said, showing client testimonials over dinner. The ones like us, betrayed by trust. Pride swelled again, that final emotional high, tears of joy this time, as I hugged him tight. When Daniel's prison outreach came, a letter, then calls from Concord Correctional, I stared at the phone, memories flooding. The desperation in his voice that arrest day, the handcuff clicks echoing. I declined, setting the receiver down gently. Some bridges burn for good. Forgiveness isn't demanded, it's earned. We embraced our resilience instead. Me back to tutoring part-time, Ethan thriving in school and his mission. Friends, as I sit here now, watching Ethan type away upstairs, protecting strangers like family, what do you think? Was justice served, or does betrayal's shadow linger forever? Share your stories in the comments. Have you reclaimed your power after loss? Like if this moved you, subscribe for more heartfelt tales, and share if it reminds you of your own battles. Thank you for joining our journey. Until next time, hold your loved ones close.